It all started in the group chat. Dave, the unofficial organizer of our annual guys' trip, had spent weeks coordinating flights, hotel bookings, and activities for our long-awaited Las Vegas weekend. As usual, there was one stick in the mud, our friend Greg. Greg is the kind of guy who insists on rules for everything, even vacations. He's also a notorious penny pincher, so his rules often seem designed to save him money or avoid activities he doesn't like. This time, Greg's decree was, stick to the schedule. We don't need any unnecessary detours or expenses. That's when the idea hit me, malicious compliance. We touched down in Las Vegas on a sunny Friday afternoon. The plan was straightforward. Check into the hotel, grab dinner, then hit the casino for a reasonable 2 hours. Greg had typed out the entire agenda, color-coded and laminated, and handed copies to everyone. We'd barely checked into our rooms when Greg started barking reminders. Meet in the lobby at 7 p.m. sharp, no delays, and remember, we're sticking to the budget. Oh, we'd stick to the budget, all right. The first stop was an off-strip buffet Greg had chosen. $20 flat, he announced proudly, and free refills on soda, great value. The rest of us exchanged skeptical glances. This place wasn't exactly the glamorous Vegas experience we'd envisioned. The food was edible, if you're being generous. Honestly, I'm pretty sure my meatloaf winked at me, but Greg was beaming, so we indulged him, knowing we had the rest of the night to salvage our fun. The buffet had all the charm of a high school cafeteria and none of the luxury of a Vegas resort. The prime rib looked more like a sad slab of mystery meat, and the mashed potatoes were so lumpy I half expected them to ask for a refund. But Greg didn't seem to mind, chowing down like we were at the finest steakhouse in town. After dinner, Greg checked his watch. Perfect timing. Now let's head to the casino. Remember, 2 hours max. He waved his laminated agenda like a drill sergeant's clipboard. I half expected him to blow a whistle. Greg insisted we go to a small, dingy casino off the main strip to avoid the tourist trap prices. This place made your average dive bar look like a palace. The carpets were stained, the ceilings low, and the only thing sparkling was the occasional coin slot getting jammed. While he stuck to penny slots and narrated every spin like a sports commentator, the rest of us gravitated toward blackjack and roulette. I'll admit the low-stakes tables weren't thrilling, but we made the best of it, until Greg's watch alarm went off precisely 2 hours later. "Time's up, boys! Cash out!" he announced with a grin, as though he had just orchestrated the greatest Vegas adventure ever. We complied, grinning through our irritation. We'd just started hitting our stride at the tables, but no, Greg's timetable ruled the day. Back at the hotel, Greg reminded us to rest up for the next day's meticulously planned activities, a budget sightseeing tour and a light lunch at some hole-in-the-wall diner. That's when I decided to take malicious compliance to the next level. The next morning, we woke up bright and early for Greg's sightseeing tour. True to his word, Greg had mapped out a route designed to minimize costs. He'd even printed coupons for attractions like the Neon Museum and a discount souvenir shop. It was like following a budget-conscious Dora the Explorer, if Dora was obsessed with Groupon. We spent the morning wandering through the Neon Museum, which was fine. There were some cool vintage signs, but it felt more like a free walking tour at a county fair. Greg snapped photos of everything, making sure we followed the no detours rule. If someone took a second to admire a neon sculpture from a different angle, Greg was there, clipboard in hand, to remind us that we were on a strict timeline. But the real fun began at lunch. Greg had picked a diner famous for its $5 sandwiches. When it was time to order, we all stuck to the script, kind of. "I'll have the $5 ham sandwich," I said. Then I added with a straight face, "But can I get double meat? I'll pay the extra $3. "Me too," chimed in Dave, who winked at me. "And can you throw in some avocado?" asked Mike, who wasn't even pretending to hold back his grin. Greg's face turned beet red as we all customized our orders. The sandwiches ended up costing closer to $15 each, completely blowing Greg's lunch budget. But hey, we stuck to his choice of restaurant. Rules are rules, after all. That evening, Greg's schedule called for free entertainment at the Bellagio fountains, followed by an early night. Instead, we hatched a plan. After watching the fountains, admittedly beautiful and made funnier by Dave narrating the water jets like they were synchronized swimmers, we casually mentioned that we'd stick to the schedule while Greg headed back to the hotel. Once he was gone, we made a beeline for a rooftop bar and splurged on cocktails with a view of the Strip. Mike even ordered a drink that came with a sparkler. Later, we hit a high-energy nightclub where Dave invented a dance move he called the Greg. It involved waving an imaginary clipboard. Greg's carefully laid plans had fallen apart without him. We toasted our defiance with cocktails that cost more than the entire budget for the day. The lights of the Strip flickered like our own private rebellion. The next morning, Greg confronted us, furious. "Where were you guys last night? You totally ditched the plan." "Actually," I said, barely hiding my grin, "we followed the schedule exactly. We just didn't specify how long we'd stay at the fountains." Greg couldn't argue with that. He looked like he wanted to, but rules were rules. By the end of the trip, Greg was still grumbling about budget overruns and lack of discipline. He tried to claim we'd sabotaged the entire trip, but deep down he knew we'd followed the letter of his law, if not the spirit of it. Meanwhile, the rest of us agreed it was one of the best Vegas trips we'd ever had. Sure, we'd stuck to the rules, but we'd also learned an important lesson. Sometimes malicious compliance is the best way to deal with a control freak, and hey, those custom sandwiches were worth every penny. After we returned home, Greg sent one final message in the group chat, a self-righteous lecture about how we ruined the trip with our rebelliousness. But we didn't respond. Instead, we shared photos of the rooftop bar and nightclub, each image carefully framed to show our grins and the neon glow of the Strip in the background. Greg unsurprisingly ignored all of them. I'm pretty sure Greg is already planning the next trip, and as always, I'll be ready with my own form of strict compliance, but this time I'll make sure to pack a backup schedule for when the real fun starts.